Thanks everyone for attending. So I'm going to be speaking today about the evolution of cashless wagering in casinos with a primary focus on electronic gaming, but across the whole casino environment. So as Andrew mentioned, I've only been given 10 minutes to cover what can be a pretty broad topic. So we'll cover a little bit on the history of wagering as it relates to electronic gaming. Brief discussion on what cashless wagering is, and then what IGT is bringing to the table in this space under the umbrella brand of Resort Wallet. So again, the topic of today's discussion is innovation in the time of COVID. So it's no secret that one of the largest problems we're facing and have ever faced is about providing that safe, clean gaming environment for players. And as a technology provider, we have to look at the solutions we're providing and make sure that we're providing solutions to that problem while still maintaining your ability to provide an enjoyable gaming experience, which at the end of the day is the reason that the patrons are visiting. So looking at the history of wagering, as I said, in electronic gaming, these devices started as coin-driven machines. It's still part of our accounting nomenclature, coin in and so on. In the early 90s, tokenization occurred on the devices. We got the ability to accept bills, notes, banknotes into the gaming machine. And shortly thereafter, the first form of cashless occurred in these gaming devices, in, ticket out. So Freddie mentioned in his talk that it's not necessarily brand new ideas that bring innovation to gaming. And as we can see there, that's 28 years old now and still kicking strong in terms of offering the ability for players to transfer funds around a gaming floor. Not long after the introduction of Tito, we saw what we consider account-based cashless wagering introduced, and as you can see there, really slow adoption. So that probably ties into the fear of technology and loss of privacy that's been discussed so far. And maybe COVID is, and the zeitgeist of COVID is the catalyst that is going to see more adoption in this space, because there are significant benefits for both players and venues to move to cashless. From a player perspective, the whole not having to carry cash, the move to contactless, as Andrew mentioned previously, the ability to manage funds at any time in any way that the player chooses to without having to interrupt a gaming session and forcing players to leave a gaming floor. So on the venue side, that obviously has an impact directly on player yield because we're allowing the players more time on the floor. And from an efficiency perspective, the cash handling costs, the cost reduction associated with reducing cash handling in a venue comes along with the territory as well. So from IGT's perspective and what we're offering in this space, our Resort Wallet infrastructure sort of has three pillars behind it. The top left, dark blue, Carded Cashless is probably what most people most familiar with in terms of an account-based cashless environment where players identify and authenticate themselves using a magnetic stripe traditional player's card. If we move around clockwise, the subsequent step to that is something we call Cardless Cashless, which is the same sort of environment. However, we're now virtualizing the player card and allowing the player to have that stored on their own mobile device. And the final pillar at the bottom is externally funding that player account from an external source, whether that be an e-voucher, a credit card, debit card, or direct from a bank account. So the Resort Wallet itself, the name gives it away, is intended to be used throughout the entire property. So not just as a wagering account for use in electronic gaming, table games, etc., but also retail, hotel, any endpoint that accepts cash at the moment. So from an outgoing perspective, where we can spend cash, we can use Resort Wallet. from an incoming and funding perspective, all the existing funding points, whether that's a cage window, a gaming machine or table, can still be used to deposit funds into the account, but we're adding the ability to do that via an external source as well. And it doesn't really matter throughout that process whether that's done with a traditional card or a digital card. So a little diagram here to explain it a bit further. That cashless wagering account above the line, all of those different vertical areas and cash endpoints, slots, tables, if you have a sports book, if you have retail, hotel, etc., we can access that account either via the traditional carded or the cardless versions. And then below the line, the ability to fund that from the existing internal cash desk, etc., but also those external sources, bank accounts, credit cards, e-vouchers. So if we drill in on each of the pillars, I just want to talk through a couple of customer journeys on each of these areas. So as I said, carded cashless, it's typically what people think about when we discuss cashless. Player needs a cashless account. They need to sign up. We issue them a magnetic stripe card. They deposit funds either at a cage window, in a gaming machine, access their account by inserting their magnetic stripe card. And if we look at the orange and sky blue sections here, they interact with the player display at a gaming machine to authenticate themselves with a PIN and select how much to transfer to the gaming machine, and then they're immediately able to play the machine. So all in all, it's a pretty good flow. It's a pretty good experience for customers. When we move to the next iteration of cardless cashless, it's quite similar. At the start, instead of issuing a magnetic stripe card, we invite the player to download an app or a virtual card direct to the native wallet of the phone. The authentication piece then happens at the player's own device, which is great. Player funds a wallet in the same way as the last step at a cash desk or an EGM. However, the orange and sky blue section here has stepped away from requiring contact with that player interface. So the player can use their own device to connect to the gaming machine. No need to touch the magnetic stripe card reader. We can do that contactless with proximity. And the issuance of the funds to the gaming machine can be done via their own device by either selecting an amount to transfer or pre-configuring a preferred amount to transfer when they connect to the gaming machine, which then gets them to gaming. So slightly improved experience, especially, as I said, with the current focus on cleanliness and contactless experience. So we move around to the final piece here, externally funding that wallet. And this is where we get true cashless and we get true contactless, because the flow's the same. Download the app, authenticate yourself. The next step is tying that external funding source, bank account, voucher, etc., all of those, to your wagering account in the venue and triggering that transfer, which means no handling cash, no going to a cash desk, no lining up at an ATM, any of those things. We can just immediately, on demand, transfer funds from outside of the property into my wagering account within it. And then the remainder is exactly the same. Connect to the gaming machine remotely, no need to touch it, and transfer funds immediately. So, I mean, all of these flows related to electronic gaming, but as I said previously, it's a true resort-wide wallet, so it can be used at all of the endpoints within a venue. So from IGT's IGTPay, I found it really interesting listening to Freddie's keynote, the discussion about not necessarily needing to be on the leading edge for it to be considered an innovation. We're talking about perfecting things that have been around for a while. An interesting thing that a lot of you probably aren't aware of is the IGTPay product, which is the gateway between that payment provider and the casino's player account, is a very mature and established product that's been around for since 2013. And that is because of IGT's legacy in lotteries, interactive gaming and sports betting that require those sorts of activities to be funded in this manner. So again, cashless around since 2014, this IGT product since 2013, but I think we've now brought it all together under this Resort Wallet banner to actually provide a really solid innovation that really meets the zeitgeist. So that's me done. Thanks very much. I'll pass it back to Andrew.
Thanks,